one of the problems that we're facing in McPherson County is that we are zoned. How many of your, are any of your counties zoned? Well, it makes life a little complicated. We actually have some weird rules, like in order to build a residence out in the country, you need to have 40 acres, unless you want to do a subdivision. That makes a lot of people mad. It also makes a lot of people mad that they have to get a building permit to put up a garage out in the country. And what makes them even more mad is that they didn't know they had to, and then they have to pay a fine. So one of the things we've been talking about, and of course, because it's my area, I've been harping on, is we've got to educate people that they need this, because how else would they know? Because most people are not hanging out on the McPherson County website and reading the planning and zoning rules, like you all are, right? This is currently, I went on Google Earth, so excuse the fuzziness. This is currently the only public message. McPherson County line, McPherson County is zoned. Zoning permits are required. And so our zoning director and our county commissioner said, well, we're announcing it every time people drive into the county. They should know that you need a building permit if you need a garage or a building of any sort. And I thought, you guys are smoking crack. So what we are actually doing, there are 9 of us on the board, and we said, okay, let's just try to educate people about the basics in our own networks. And so my address is Windham, population 89. I actually live 5 miles outside of Windham. And so these are 2 groups that I'm a part of on Facebook. And so coming up in the next week, we're actually putting some messages together. And my job will be to go out in these groups and educate these 306 people here and these 144 people here over on my side of the county about the fact that they need to have a building permit if they want to put up a building. So that is my role as an ambassador for that board, and truly information about your organization gets out the best when it goes through you. All of you are excellent ambassadors for your organizations, especially in small communities. Relationships matter. People trust who they know. Staff simply cannot reach everyone. And a lot of times it's, certainly they don't have that much time, but they also don't have those relationships or the confidence sometimes to reach out to people they don't know. And stories are what help people understand what the situation is. Back to the Planning and Zoning Board, almost all the cases we hear that end up in our purview are disputes among neighbors and about misunderstandings with zoning. And so when we start saying, well, in this other situation this happened, and in this other situation this happened, it really starts to cool their jets. So we're going to talk about that today. So you are ambassadors, but really you are your organization's best amplifiers. And so I was doing some math. So we have 26 counties here. And we have 2 boards, let's say your Community Foundation and your Economic Development boards, and let's just say you each have 8 members. Some of you may have more or less. But that's basically 416, we'll call y'all microphones out there. And if you each talk to just one person a month for a year, that is almost 5,000 conversations across your area that otherwise would not happen. And that seems like a pretty easy commitment, to talk to one person a month, each board member. So that's what we're going to think about. Now, this is usually what I see when I talk to Community Foundation boards about being an ambassador. They say, I cannot talk to people about fundraising. I don't know how to ask them for money. They're very, very nervous about things. And I'm sure there's that part on the Economic Development Board's front as well. But it doesn't have to be scary. The other thing I get a lot is, can you just give us an elevator statement? We need to know what to say. And so today, though, we are not going to be memorizing an elevator statement. We just need to think about recognizing a moment about what somebody cares about and what they're interested in, and then helping them take the next step. So I'd like to use a bridge metaphor. In this case, our bridge is you as board members. So there are people who want to accomplish something in your community. It could be something charitable, it could be a project, it could be starting a business, it could be anything across anything that your foundations and your economic development work covers. And then there are staff and resources on the other side of the bridge. What we need board members to do is to get people from one side to the other. Board members don't have to be the ones doing the selling job or talking about all the resources. You just have to bring them to the people that know that information. And the bridge, the way you get over the bridge is through a story, because people really understand examples. So I'm going to pick on Carl for a second. Where's Carl? Ah, there you are. I'm coming back to you soon. So you may get the question, what is Sheridan County Community Foundation? And the good news is you can keep it really simple at this juncture. You don't need to memorize a big old statement about you have funds and you have a community fund and you have match day and all that kind of stuff. You can basically say that your community foundation helps people make a lasting difference in Sheridan County. And then you shut up. You have to figure out which door you're going to lead them through. They don't come through the same door. You have to figure out which door of the house, and then you could lead them to other doors down the road. So you just need one story that is going to show how a person like them did the thing that they're interested in. You like my AI images? These are so great these days. We also have, I'll pick on Republic County too. I know Chris is new. How can the Republic County Economic Development Office help our business? And then you can think about, okay, is this person in this situation would be an employer? You bring them through a story through that door. And then you have others who are entrepreneurs or developers or prospective residents and so on. And you think about a story for that. So now it's story time. Good way to put you to sleep at 4 o'clock almost on a Wednesday afternoon. So what's important about stories though is stories, and I know this seems obvious, stories are about people. A lot of times you'll get a story that's like, Sheridan County Community Foundation gave 36 grants last year and put $100,000 into our community. I'm making that up. But what's more interesting is when you talk about a person who was able to accomplish something, or a person who was impacted. So a story is always about a person, about what they were trying to accomplish, how your organization helped, what changed, and then what's possible now. So I'd like you all to just pick a neighbor at your table, and for 3 minutes, maybe 4, we'll see, I want you to swap a story. And I want you to think about those doors that we were just talking about. What's somebody that your organization helped? What were they trying to accomplish? What did your organization do? And what's now possible as a result? It is 3:03. I'm going to give you 4 minutes. Pick someone at your table. You each swap a story, and you're going to go home with an extra story. All right. You all should have at least one other story in addition to your own now. And I am a huge fan of borrowing/stealing from other people, especially if they're from the next county over, because there's always a little bit of envy and competition when you mention what's happening the next county over. So we're going to hear a few of these stories so that you can stick them in your back pocket. Because when we think about the stories that you're going to need to get these various people into the different doors, you're going to need some different stories at the ready in your brain. So I've got a few here. Tell us who you are and what your story is. You can stand up.
I'm Molly. I'm from Republic County Community Foundation, director there. And the story Lori'd like me to share with you is one I shared yesterday. We had a unique gift years ago to the foundation, and I have more facts today, everybody. So it was a tractor. We're talking like a steel wheel one that was in the pasture for 75 years. And from what I understand, it was like a motor on wheels that don't turn, it just went straight. And the owner of this tractor was in his final months and mentioned to a board member at the time, hey, I think we need to sell that tractor. I've got plans for that. And the board member at the time said, oof, are you sure don't we need to just take that to the scrap iron and get scrap money for it? And the donor was like, nope, I think you better do your research. So this very rare Minneapolis 2550, it's crystal clear now, isn't it? Sold for on auction for like $300,000 or something. Oh, 125. And now that is a designated fund supporting two little things in Little London, Kansas.
That is awesome.
Give her a hand. So I love this story about very unusual assets that people give for things that they care about. Julia.
I'm Julia Raby with Solomon Valley Community Foundation, and before I was the director, there was a family that was going to be inheriting some oil and gas interests, and it was going to the next generation, and it was a complicated gift in the way that there was several different siblings and different family situation where it wasn't really producing much, and that would have been dividing these consistent checks that were just really complicated. So through a fund, they were able to donate the oil and gas interest, and they designated that to go to our operating for the Community Foundation. And so that has been a huge blessing because when it would be all divided, it wasn't much at all. But now that it's together in a fund, it's been producing, and of course it goes up and down, but it's been a great blessing to the Community Foundation.
Thank you. I love this story because it is a non-cash asset and operations. And for those of you who have been in the fundraising business for a while, you will know that operations or admin fund money is the hardest to raise. And if you think back to the doors, there was not a door there that said operations fund. That is in the back of the house. You got to bring people in through the front doors with a small gift or something that they care about so that they come to trust you and understand your work over time, and then you can make an ask for operations. Now, there are going to be a few people who get it right off the bat, but for the most part, that is a really difficult and an ask that requires a lot of trust. So we're going to come over here to Carl next.
Nearly the end of our match month last November, I had a donor come in. They were a first-time donor, and they had a pretty big check. And I said, well, to be quite honest, we've met our goal. But I have another opportunity. Just wait. I have another opportunity to where we could work with you to build your own fund, and I can give you some additional matching to put into that. What do you think? And he's like, well, I've been wanting to give. I get your mailing every year, but we're always busy with fall harvest and that kind of stuff. And it just worked out, too, that I've got a youth action council that I got started based on Heartlands this calendar year, and his daughter's been a part of it. So there's been some more just at home, I think, advocacy for the foundation, which has been nice. And then they have recently attended a donor dinner. But he said, that sounds pretty good. And can I continue to give to this year after year? I said, you absolutely can. So we had the full conversation, and it worked out that, yes, he decided he wanted to do the fund instead of the match month this year, and we got a new fund from it, so.
Good. Fantastic. I really love this story because, first of all, it's about people thinking about collective giving and with Match Month, and then turning that conversation into something that was even more interesting to the donor. Love that. All right, we're going to come over to Jessica.
My name is Jessica Matthews, and I'm from the Cheyenne County, Kansas.
Will you tell your
Community
tearjerker?
Foundation.
Which one?
We
Oh,
had an
tell me
opportunity
any
at the
childcare
end of
story.
Last year, we had some grant
I'll give you a minute.
funds left over, which I was kind of sad about, but at the same time, let's utilize that. So I approached my board, and I had some crazy ideas, like I always do, and they approved them. So I took X amount of money, and I went out into our community, and I shared with them all of the funds that we had, and I showed them the endowment, the non-endowment, and all of the options. And I would give them a $100 opportunity from, we called them Cheyenne County Bucks, and they could decide where that money would go. So then at the end of all of that, we put all that money together and gave it to those nonprofits. And so here's the story. So I take it to the EMS building, and I didn't know I was coming. And none of these nonprofits knew, unless they were a part of my presentation, knew that this money was coming to them. So I was just told they've been having trainings on Monday nights. Every Monday night we'll be there. And I said, okay, I'll make it at some point. I walk in and Jill, our director up at the EMS building, she's in her office, and I said, hey, I have the check presentation. The community has decided to give you guys $1,000. Can we go back there to the class and present this? And she said, sure, let's do it. And so we walk back there, and the teacher is teaching on a certain topic, and we're not going to interrupt him, so we're standing there for like 10 minutes or so, and he just continues on. And he talks about when you go into a crisis situation and the things that you're going to see and what that's going to do to your mental state. And he continues on, and the hair on my arms just stands up, because that's why I'm there, to give them that $1,000 for that fund that Jill created for that very thing. And so I got to share with that whole group of people what was happening and what she had done for our community. So it was a circle there.
You know, those moments just aren't entirely coincidence. I think they all come together. Okay, now I'm springing this on Dana. She told me yesterday, she said, I had a story. I listened last year with the tearjerker thing, and I have one. I don't know if this is that story, but let's hear it.
So that was a 30-second heads up, by the way.
Oh, yeah, very short.
So anyway, we had at the Innovation Center, when we talked about economic development, we had lots of community partners that came in and talked about specifically what those services meant to them, and there were some really good ones. The one that we brought in from childcare had to do with the Russell Child Care Coalition and the struggle that they have had over the years, but all of a sudden everything is clicking into place. And what most people don't know is yesterday we talked about that the coalition was funding this thing, but after they got finished talking, I got a text from another organization in Russell that says, I'm writing this with tears of joy. They accessed our child care grant writing services. They received a grant, thank you Hanson Foundation, for the child care center in Russell. And with that, that's going to go so far in addressing child care needs in that county. And we hear that all the time. It's one thing to talk about big child care, but when you talk about it for one specific thing, I'll also tell that I had someone who couldn't come to the economic development side. She goes, but by the way, last year you were talking about child care, and one of those facilities was developed in my community, and now my new child goes, so she just had a baby, goes to that facility. So it's one thing to talk about child care, it's another when you see that it affects people personally in their businesses and their personal life.
Thank you, you're amazing. Okay, now I did not get to hear all of the economic development stories yesterday, nor was I at every table right now. But I'm just curious, did anyone hear a story about establishing a new business that you're like, wow, that's amazing? And you can pick on your neighbor to tell the story. Anyone? Yeah?
Nothing to do with childcare.
Okay.
So there's an organization that Monty brought to us, and Norton Manufacturing, and I'm going to mess all this up, but this family was involved with giving some loan services and operating this new business. When they were young men, they lived in Atwood. Their father was a doctor, and as a doctor, he delivered lots of babies. And those babies grow up, and they shared that yesterday that one of their newest staff hires at this place that they have bought and financed and are having in Norton was a baby that their father had delivered all those years ago. So to look at that continuum of where that family went and where they ended up was just a great, to me, Northwest Kansas story.
He saved his life.
And then he saved his life, yeah, it was a great thing. Yeah.
Thank you. We have a room of storytellers here. This is fantastic. So the next thing is, so that's the whole key. Figure out what the person's interested in and tell them an example. Seems simple enough. You don't need an elevator statement. You just have to figure out how you're going to lead the horse to water. That's it. But if we think bigger picture, there are some things that you can do as a board member, or for those of you who are staff, to talk to the other board members who are not here about. And that's what I would call the 4 Ps of engagement. And so those 4 Ps are personal contacts, professional advisors, partnerships, and public awareness. And so these seem pretty simple, but the number one thing that we have from board members is your contacts, your friends, your network of folks. And personal introductions lead to stronger relationships. People trust you if you recommend to them that they should talk to your foundation or they should talk to your economic development staff. They're probably going to take your recommendation. The next thing is professional advisors, and this hits both sides of the table too. I have community foundation clients all over the country. One of them is north of Sacramento. They are Placer Community Foundation, and they did an analysis of their assets. They're at about 35 million in assets, so, you know, a growing foundation. And they said 80% of their assets had come from referrals from attorneys and financial planners. So if you are a community foundation, that is a very, very important group of folks to groom. And the hard part here is that those advisors are not necessarily in your own community. I mean, if you're in a community of 3,500 people, you might have an attorney. You might have a couple of CPAs. So how do you get at those people? And the way to do that is through who are the advisors to your board members? And if you can be in touch with them, then it's likely that other people in your community are using those same advisors. Same thing on the economic development side. Your bankers, your other financial services professionals, they are connections into your business, your entrepreneurs and your business owners. The next thing is partnerships. I love this story too. This actually is from Sacramento. One of their board members is part of the local flying club. And I happen to be, we're buying our first piece of farm ground next week. We happened to be in with our attorney last week, and he's like, oh, we're part of the McPherson Flying Club. And I'm like, you have a flying club here? Yeah, there are 13 of us. And my thought was, oh, you guys have money. You should be talking to the foundation. Partnerships have two pieces to them. One is organizations that are mission aligned that you can help. So like for a community foundation, that might be your nonprofit partners. But the other side of it is groups that have people that you can tap into for the donor side. So like the Flying Club is a great one. Book clubs, social clubs of different kinds, service clubs, those kinds of organizations. Those are really important partnerships in achieving what you need to achieve. And then the last one, which is the one you think of as, we'll call it marketing, is public awareness. And this is where you can do some really simple things that make a lot of difference. Forwarding e-newsletters to a few people, sharing social media things, just talking about the foundation when you're out at community events. Basketball games are a great place for this in small communities. Football games, not quite as easy. Anything in a gym. So the question is, are you ready to be an ambassador for your organization? Now, hopefully I've made it pretty easy. All you need to do is listen and figure out a story that can connect someone in. So your job, again, is not to convert people. You do not need to know the whole story. That is totally fine. You're just going to lead them to where they need to go. So you can, if you introduce your organization to your friends, you engage your own professional advisors, you share stories with groups that you're a part of, and you share on social media and events and on email and all those places you already are, you are there. So what I would challenge you to do is to do the following exercise with your board. And these are going to be tiny types, so I'm just going to tell you what's on there. But I want you to have it when you go to the website for the forum. You can print it off and use it. So what I like to do, there's a piece of paper for each one of the P's. And if you have your board fill this out, you're going to collect a lot of really valuable information. The first one is their professional advisors, who is their attorney, their financial advisor or planner, their accountant, anyone that's an advisor. And then ask folks to do really easy things, like, will you share a brochure with one of the advisors? Easy, easy stuff. It's not like you're going to have to ask for a big gift. The next thing is personal contacts. If each board member gives 5 personal contacts, just to put on the e-news list, that's a lot more awareness that can happen. And then having just some selections for people that are easy to more commitment. Some people are more comfortable doing more public kinds of things. Partnerships, are there a couple of organizations that you're a part of that you could be a liaison to? Either nonprofits or more on the social or group side. And then finally, public awareness. What kinds of things would you be willing to do? Would you wear a name tag? Whoops, did I just mess this up? Ah, there we go. We're back. So would you wear a name tag, or would you do a whole video testimonial as something that's really a lot of commitment? So we've been doing this workshop with a number of boards, community foundations, and a few other nonprofits. And what's worked really well is to have the board managing itself, because it's a lot to put on a staff person to have to track people down and make sure it all happens. So first is we take those 4 pages filled out. Actually, we have a Google form, so it makes it really easy. And we compile that into a scorecard. And each person gets their own, and at each board member, you just hand it back out and say, what'd you do, and do you need any help? And then they can write on that and pass it back in. You need somebody on the board to be the tail twister. I don't know, I think, is that a Lions Club term? We need someone to be out there making people do it. A lot of times it ends up being the board chair because that's just sort of the personality of board chairs. But anyway, there's a tail twister, and then you need somebody to be the record keeper. And sometimes that is staff, but it's even better if it's a board member who will just take those sheets back in and mark the 3 or 4 things that each board member does each month. So, do this exercise with your board, share these stories that you're coming up with each month, and then start being an amplifier. And you're going to see the multiplication happen. I mean, just imagine when we come back next year and 5,000 stories or conversations would have happened. Imagine the power of all of you sitting in this room. Questions? Yes?
On your list of professionals, would it be appropriate to list the mortician?
In my opinion, everyone's fair game. The question was funeral directors. Are they yeah, absolutely. In fact, there are some people who have been actively, like they put it on as an audience, is your funeral directors. And even just having a brochure sitting in a brochure holder there, families have a hard time figuring out who they should give to. Are you a funeral director? No? Okay, I was gonna say, we had firsthand experience here. No, great question. I think that's an important audience, actually. Yes. Other questions? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I cannot wait to hear all your stories next year and all of the progress that you make from those 5,000 conversations.